Welcome to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. I'm Greg Drevenstedt, Editor-in-Chief at Rider Magazine. Our guest today is Guillermo Cornejo, who is co-founder and CEO of RiderShare, a peer-to-peer motorcycle rental network, which is similar to Airbnb for motorcycles. RiderShare was founded in 2018, and in the past 5 years, the network has grown to have more than 4,000 different motorcycles available to rent in every street legal category around the country. RiderShare has grown by more than 75% over the past 2 years and is now ranked #1 on Google for motorcycle rental searches. We talked to Cornejo about how he started RiderShare, about the most popular motorcycles to rent on the network, and the additional income motorcycle owners earn when they rent out their motorcycles. Some have even started their own motorcycle rental businesses using the network. Cornejo is an enthusiastic, energetic guy who saw an opportunity in the motorcycle marketplace and built a company to satisfy an unmet need. Stay tuned for another great episode of the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. Hey, Guillermo, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me.
So you're the co-founder and CEO of RiderShare, which is a peer-to-peer motorcycle rental network. So for people that aren't familiar with what peer-to-peer rentals are, tell us a little bit about what RiderShare does.
Yeah, so RiderShare is basically like Airbnb, but instead of renting out your home to a stranger, you rent out your motorcycle to a stranger.
Okay.
And yeah, obviously to make it trustworthy, we provide insurance, we vet the riders, we make sure that they have a motorcycle license, we ask people that lease their motorcycles to provide us with their inspection history and service records and so on and so forth.
So, you mentioned Airbnb. Like, I've certainly rented places from Airbnb many times, but I don't own an Airbnb rental property myself. So I kind of know what being the renter is like. But so what is it? You basically, the people that are part of RiderShare as a network, these are people that own motorcycles that maybe they own more than one. They maybe don't ride it all the time. And this is a way for them to earn extra money on their motorcycle. Is that correct?
Correct. There's obviously everyone uses a platform to make money, but some of them, they've gone so far as to start full-time businesses with 30 motorcycles, and this is what they do for a living, and they own all kinds of bikes, that they have for fun with in their free time. Then there's other people that use RiderShare because they can't really afford the bike of their dream, but that one booking a month is enough to make the difference. And because they make good money, like $100 a day per rental day for the owner.
Wow.
And yeah, and then there's people that are, hey, I'm going to this motorcycle, I use it very little, it sits there, and I could use it to write off my taxes. And so basically,
right.
they set up. I've learned a lot that a lot of people, I guess the wealthier crowds, they set up LLCs.
Right.
And then they write off all the depreciation on the motorcycle, and so that saves them money that way.
Well, that makes sense. A little over a year ago, it was, I think, in the December 2021 issue of Rider, one of our editors had rented a motorcycle through RiderShare. So he was based in the Los Angeles area. He rented a nearly brand new BMW R1250 GS, and the guy he rented it from was only about 10 minutes from his house. And as it turned out, this is a guy named David Stromberg, who he, like you had mentioned, he started, he had said that he had in the story that in the magazine, he had an Aprilia Tuono that he was a precious bike. He didn't want to rent that out, but I guess he had heard about RiderShare, and he actually bought a Ducati Monster to rent out on the platform. And he ended up with his rental fees, paid it off within 4 months. And as of a year ago, when we had interviewed him, he has had a business, like you said, a thriving business. He had a fleet of 30 motorcycles. He had a storefront. He had a full-time mechanic to maintain his bikes and everything. And so he had built this really thriving business, basically utilizing RiderShare, just like people do with Airbnb. And I know some people rent out RVs and all kinds of stuff through different platforms. So that's great.
Yeah, David he belonged in this community of motorcycle riders in that area of LA. And so he had a lot of customers were waiting to, in line from his pre-existing network. And so that's why he quickly became our largest host in the United States.
Wow.
But he's not alone. We have quite a few people that are building fleets like David in other cities.
Right.
not just in LA. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, particularly in a big urban area, especially Southern California, which got a lot of motorcyclists you can ride year round. But I imagine in places like Houston or Orlando or Miami, again, these big cities, you've got a good riding weather, and that you would have a lot of interested people to rent your motorcycles. I imagine you could rent something if you live in a small town, but you might not have as many people are nearby that would be interested in renting them. So it seems like it would work really well for some people in these big markets for sure.
Yeah, so far it's working better in the bigger markets, but also in any market that has a lot of tourism. For example, we have some people in Tennessee and close to the tail of a dragon.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
So it's not a big market, but like people go there to ride. So like if you find good riding spots, that those are usually great spots for rentals as well. It's not just about being close to big cities.
Sure. Well, let's see, Tail of the Dragon. So like nearby there would be like Knoxville, Tennessee, or Charlotte, North Carolina. Those are places. Charlotte's definitely an airline hub. So I imagine somebody could fly into Charlotte, get a bike near there, and you're not that long of a ride to get up into the Appalachians and be on the Blue Ridge Parkway or something like that. So that's a cool way to do it because we cover a lot of travel, motorcycle travel in our magazine, and we have travel stories all over the country. But for example, I'm in Southern California, and we often will publish travel stories about the Northeast of the United States. Well, that's thousands of miles away. So it's, a lot of people are thinking in their mind, oh, I've got to ride my own motorcycle. Well, riding, you would spend days and days just to get to across the country. And if your destination, you only have a week to ride or something, you want to ride in Vermont, New Hampshire, it would make sense to fly into a place and prearrange a rental like this and then go ride for a week and then just fly home. That's a cool idea.
Yeah, like I would say 90% of our customers are people that are traveling from a different metro area. And we serve a lot of foreigners like Europeans,
Sure.
those Germans, they love to ride Route 66 and
Yeah.
like feel American.
Right. So let's so RiderShare, you started it in about 2018, is that right? So it's about 5 years old now. So give us a little bit of background. I mean, how did you start something like this?
Yeah, I started because I was learning how to ride and I crashed a motorcycle and had all these hospital bills, had 17 pins in my left hand, and I could not afford to buy a replacement. And but also when I did own a motorcycle, I only rode it on the weekends when the weather was nice, not too hot, not too cold, and when there wasn't a raging party going on that I would rather go to, right? And so I only use my motorcycle like 10 times a year. And so I thought, I'm just gonna rent one, instead of buying one whenever I want to. And that's when I discovered, shit, like rentals are really, really expensive. And so, at the time I worked in risk management for General Motors, and I saw that I was working on this with this group that they were using pretty cutting edge techniques. Everyone talks about AI today, but they were using them, more than 10 years ago to predict risk, and it was really cool. And I was like, well, I could use this technology that I've learned to manage the risk of people riding motorcycles, and the business model of Airbnb to cut the fixed cost out of the equation and make it affordable. And so we're halfway there. It's still not as affordable as I wish it was,
Right.
but we're getting there, and it's certainly more affordable, and there's more variety, and there are bikes that are closer to you than
Right.
if you go to any traditional rental shop.
Right. Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, particularly for those that own the motorcycles that are going to rent them out, they're going to want some reassurance that, like you said, the renters are vetted. There's going to be some insurance. There's going to be some coverage because, I mean, accidents happen. People drop bikes. I mean, typically, I know from my own personal experience, it's often you just knock one over in a parking lot. You put your foot down
Yeah.
wrong or something like that. But scratches and dings and damage like that, nobody wants that to happen to their motorcycle. So that's got to be factored in, of course, I'm sure. But the idea of either in your case, you were saying, hey, I'm not going to ride my motorcycle that much, but how can I defray the costs of you have to pay for insurance yourself, if you have a loan or financing or something like that, maybe you have to pay to store it or something like that to be able to again, you can have the rental fees end up paying for most of that, and you end up getting a motorcycle that for your own use, more or less for free or for a deep discount. So that's a cool idea.
Yeah, or
So
five, right?
you what?
or 5 motorcycles, right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, yeah. I mean, that's a cool. I mean, I trust me. I mean, I know quite a few people that have multiple motorcycles that they've got a Harley and then they've got a dirt bike or something like that, and you can only ride one motorcycle at a time. Most people don't loan them out to friends that much, but it makes sense to be able to loan them out. But I would also think that what one of the challenges you mentioned that when you had this accident, it was going to be expensive to buy a replacement motorcycle. I would think, one of the things that most people can't do is get a test ride on a motorcycle that they may be interested in. Maybe there's a demo ride at a rally or an event, but those are not that common. They're few and far between. The dealer events are not that common. So if there's somebody that's interested in a particular kind of motorcycle, they might be able to find it on your network and say, hey, before I go plunk down the money on a Ducati Panigale or some expensive motorcycle, let me try it out and see if I like it.
absolutely. And some people rent eight different bikes before they decide which one to buy. And many dealers do offer test rides, but this usually supervised, and
Right.
it takes a couple of hours before you really start to feel that back pain, right?
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, the rentals are a great way. We're actually trying to partner with OEMs to offer our product at dealerships so people can just test ride before they buy.
That's a cool idea. Yeah. Yeah, because I know demo units are pretty rare at motorcycle dealerships. I mean, occasionally you might find them. And again, maybe there'll be a demo day or something they do, but it's not a common thing. That's just the liability is way too high to have somebody that's not been vetted to go out and take a bike they haven't purchased and potentially damage it and then just walk away. So
Absolutely. And if we could get into that market, by providing security and insurance, it wouldn't just mean that more people can test ride motorcycles before they buy, but also those OEMs would sell
right.
a few hundred more demos per year, right? It could make a meaningful difference. So we're working that angle right now with a couple of OEMs.
That makes sense. I mean, because they always say, they want butts and seats. And, if there used to be some of the things like the IMS shows where they could sit on bikes, but and maybe they could do demos or something. But again, it's just, it really depends on where you live and what sort of events you have access to. You may not get
Once a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, what's the sort of scope of rider share? How many people do you have renting out bikes, or how many bikes are on your network?
Yeah, on any given day, we have between 3,500 and 4,000 motorcycles actively listed for rent. And, we've served over 50,000 people that rented our motorcycles on the demand side of the equation.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we operate in every state except New York. They have some weird regulations there. So we haven't been able to, yeah. But every other state we're there, and we usually have the nicest network of motorcycles. And like you mentioned, if there's ever damage to the motorcycle, we have to contractually, we're obliged to repair the motorcycle back to to its original state.
Right.
And so what that means is when you rent from rideshare, usually the bikes, they don't have dents, they don't have scratches, and they were maintained by someone that also rides them, whose life depends on it, right? So
Right.
they're usually in better shape than the brick and mortars. And yeah, and that's who'd have thought, but it ended up being like a nicer way to rent motorcycles, not just more affordable.
Right. So how does I mean, again, you mentioned Airbnb. That's an example a lot of people have familiarity with. That's a physical location that you go to and rent it. This is not a brick and mortar rental location. So what's the typical handoff look like for somebody who, let's say you're a renter, you fly into some town, you fly into Las Vegas and you want to you've rented a bike through rideshare. How does somebody typically pick up a bike?
Yeah, so typically people go to someone's house and they meet
Okay.
outside, and then they do exchange. We require you take pictures before and after the checking, and check the person's license is they are who they say they are on the website, stuff like that.
Right.
We, believe it or not, fraud is a huge problem. We have like 14 different APIs connections to check that the person trying to rent your motorcycle is not a thief.
Right.
And but about 40% of our motorcycles are also available for delivery. So if you pay extra, they can bring it to you.
Oh, that's
And
nice. So somebody could maybe take an Uber or something, or a taxi to somebody's house to pick it up and then do this, kind of do the reverse when they drop it off. But they could maybe have it delivered to a hotel or some neutral location or something. Yeah.
Yeah, if the host has a truck, they can just put in the truck and take it, and
Nice.
they don't even have to pay for an Uber, right?
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's cool. So I'm curious, since there's such a wide variety of motorcycles, you said 3,500 to 4,500 motorcycles at any given time they're available to rent. What are some of the most popular bikes on your network?
Yeah. So Harley's still king.
Yeah.
But it's not as much as new vehicles as inventory that's out there on the roads. So I'll say about 30% of our rentals are Harley, and
Okay.
the Harley baggers are still number one.
Right.
And then the surprising number two is BMW.
Okay.
People love to rent Beamers, especially the adventure ones, that I think it's 1250 GS, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, my dad used to have one of those. I get it, they're awesome, but they're so tall, man. I'm too
Yeah,
short for
they
that
are.
stuff.
If you can get your feet on the ground, they're a great bike. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then number three is Ducati.
Okay.
We don't have very many Ducatis compared to other models, but makes. But they rent super well. It's all kinds of Ducatis do well, but yeah, but the Monster for the longest time was our best seller. I
Right.
think people go to the website and they don't even know that they could, oh, like I can afford to throw my leg over a Ducati. Like I
Right.
didn't even know that was an option, right?
Right. Right.
And so yeah.
Well, that was the example we talked about David Stromberg earlier. He said that he bought a Ducati Monster and had it paid off within 4 months, and I guess that was the spark that lit the fire to start his own business to do it. And I know I don't know. I know he's got over 30 bikes. I don't know what all of them are, but I took a quick look at his website recently, and he has a lot of sport bikes. I imagine those are pretty popular in Southern California. We're known in the LA area for the Malibu roads and Angeles Crest Highway and stuff like that. So yeah, people want to go to the rock store and go to some of those famous places and ride fast on those roads. So yeah.
Yeah, I lived there for a while and it's fantastic. Not just the rides, but the views too. Like,
Right.
oh, so cool. And then we moved to Texas in 2020, and I guess I got a cruiser because you don't really need a sport bike in this part of the
No,
country, right?
no,
It's just
no. Well, but you're what, in Austin, so you're not that far from the hill country, and that's good riding, man.
it's good riding, but I'm not gonna ever use like the full 60 degrees of lean angle, right? Like
Right, right,
yeah, but I'd rather just be comfortable.
right,
But it is, yeah, it is good riding. Not complaining.
right, right. No, that's
but
good.
but but like the canyons, man, in near Malibu, oof,
Right.
that's something else.
Yeah, I'm just north of there in Ventura, so I'm on the coast, just north of Malibu, and that's a go-to place for us for sure, is for photo shoots and for rides and stuff like that. And I'm fortunate enough I can go during the week because the weekends can get a little bit busy, but I'd
Yeah,
rather go on a Tuesday when there's hardly anybody out there. So
yeah, because it's not just bikes, it's cars too, right?
right,
That
right, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there's a lot of guys with spend a lot of money on cars and they want to show off and they don't necessarily have the skills to back it up. So yeah, I don't want to get taken out by somebody else. That's my biggest concern.
yeah, you gotta be careful in that area.
Right. So RiderShare has a program. It's called the Rider Pass. Is that like a subscription? So what's that about?
Yeah. Again, like my goal is to make renting a motorcycle, more affordable than owning one. And part of the reason is that there's like 20 million people out there that have a motorcycle license but don't currently own a motorcycle. So the subscription was kind of like, it was like we were looking at, how to offer lower prices to people that rent multiple times. Because when you rent just for, one rental day, it's usually more expensive on a per day basis
Mhm.
because that one day has to pay for the verification costs and the marketing costs and all that stuff. But if you rent for 10 days, we're super affordable. But what if you rent on 10 different days for the year, right? So with the subscription, we're able to basically, by making that monthly payment, or you're basically committing that you're gonna rent all year round. So we
Right.
can give you a 25% discount. And then
Nice.
again, we're still not there yet, but it's one more step towards replacing, not replacing ownership, but providing an alternative to that is affordable for people to enjoy motorcycles and maybe other power sports in the future.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, like again, where I live in Southern California, you know, a lot of people they either want to rent a Mustang and go up Highway 1 up through, you know, up the coast, or they want to rent a Harley Bagger or BMW. They sometimes do it in RVs. The brick and mortar RV and car rental places, but to be able to rent something that's unique is harder because it's not part of a traditional rental fleet. And so that's seems what RiderShare offers is, like I said, you've got popular bikes like Harley Baggers and BMW GSs, but I'm sure if somebody was like, hey, I'd love to, I mean, you could have somebody on a pretty unusual motorcycle that's like, well, I'm just going to rent it out, you know, and if somebody wanted to do it just to have a different experience, I mean, maybe a Ural with a sidecar or something like that. I mean, it's just like, you know, might not be able to rent one of those in most places, but maybe somebody here in the Southern California has one. You can put your dog in there and go up the coast.
Absolutely. Those Urals are very popular when we have them. Those three-wheelers are also surprisingly popular, like the Can-Am,
Sure.
the Spider.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anything that's unusual is usually tends to do well. Moto Guzzi, you know, all those cool brands. But yeah, but there's a lot of people that are just into Japanese bikes, and they'll, if you know, if you add up all the brands, the Japanese are definitely the largest segment of our rentals.
Right.
And but each one individually is not, right, because there's just so many: Yamaha, Kawasaki, Honda, like yeah,
Right. Yeah. Right.
but they're pretty popular too.
Right. So, like I said, I've looked at some of the numbers I've got for RiderShare. So you guys have grown quite a bit in the last couple of years, 75% growth or more in the last couple of years, and you've got more than 50,000 five-star reviews, and you're ranked #1 on Google for motorcycle rental searches. So those are all pretty impressive numbers to have. You know, like I said, your business is only 5 years old. It sounds like you've grown a lot. So what's kind of the next step? I know there's this crowdfunding opportunity that you're rolling out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks. So yeah, we grew fairly fast, but we were mostly focused on figuring out the insurance piece of the business and how to turn this into a sustainable, profitable business. And so if you look at our offering, when we first started, our gross margins were negative. Then in 2021 they got positive, and in 2022 they were solid, right? Not quite tech startup level, but good. And then in 2023 we think we're gonna be in good position to be, you know, like a tech company type of margin of gross margin. And so now we need to focus on growth. So 75%, 100%. That was mostly just using organic tactics, like you mentioned, getting us to rank #1 on Google. And so now what's left for us is to build brand awareness in the motorcycle community. There are about 8 million people that own motorcycles, and we need every single one of them to know that we exist. Because if that happens, then there's going to be hundreds of thousands of motorcycles available for rent, making the supply, you know, much higher quality and the experience much better for people that are renting. And then, of course, if 8 million people know that we exist, then hundreds of thousands are going to be renting those motorcycles, and it creates this fancy terms liquidity, right? Where you can find anything you want and you can make money from anywhere you are, as long as you own a motorcycle. And so that's what we're trying to do in the next few years. And if we do it super well, we'd love to also do it with snowmobiles and ATVs and anything that's fun.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, what I was just thinking as you're talking about that is, you know, I've seen the Motorcycle Industry Council numbers for 2022 compared to 2021. And, you know, there was a pandemic surge in motorcycle sales, and that was good in some ways. But it's kind of contracted again. So most categories of motorcycle and ATV sales are down from 21 to 22. Dual sport, which includes the adventure bikes like the GS, that's the one bright spot. It's really popular. But I would think, you know, this may be a way in which there could be some growth in unit sales in the motorcycle industry. Is not everybody's going to start their own little home-based, you know, motorcycle rental business, but wouldn't take a lot of people to do it for them to buy motorcycles they wouldn't have bought otherwise if they're doing it to rent it out. Because I mean, a rental property, because I've had my accountants be like, hey, you and your wife should, you know, buy a house and rent it out. And I'm like, well, that takes a lot of money I don't have. But renting out a motorcycle is the barrier to entry to that as a side gig, which is the popular term these days, or some side business, or a way to add another motorcycle to the household and have a way to pay for it is it seems like it's within reach of most people, I would think.
Thanks. I tend to agree.
Yeah. Yeah, so like you said, you've got the fundamentals established. Like you said, it's the risk management, the insurance. I mean, that would be I would think the first question most people would have if they were going to rent out their motorcycle to someone else. You've got the vetting process sorted out to where people can have a sense of reassurance if there is damage to their bike. It will get repaired back to the way it was. That's something that's covered. And then it sounds like from the renter's side of things, you're saying that, especially if whether they are a Riders Pass subscriber or they rent multiple times or like longer period of time, that the per day rental is much more affordable than your typical brick and mortar type rental location. Is that true?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're raising funds basically to spend most of them on brand awareness and
Right.
yeah, because then yeah, like I said, it's just the more people that use the marketplace, the more value that it creates for people.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's like the last thing left for us is, we need to we're trying to end the year with 10,000 motorcycles because that would be, yeah, it's a lofty goal, but I think we can do it.
So how does this crowdfunding arrangement work? I'm not really that familiar. There's a platform, and that it's somebody on an individual basis could participate in this.
Yeah, everyone's new to it because it's a fairly new regulation that the government passed called Reg CF that
Okay.
allows retail investors, so normal people, not just rich people, to invest into private companies through these registered platforms. We are using a platform named Republic,
Okay.
and so people go on there. The offering is on the Republic website, including what we file with the SEC. And the way it works is you spend money and you get a convertible note, which is like a paper that says that if Riders is ever sold or goes public, I'm gonna get a percentage of that company, right? So basically, you're basically like an owner of a part owner of RiderShare.
Oh, great. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, we can certainly include a link to that in the show notes to that listing on Republic if people want to learn more about it. So that's a cool. I didn't realize I'd never heard of it before. So when I looked at the information before this interview, I hadn't heard of that. So I've heard of crowdfunding. People are all familiar with Kickstarter things, but that's a very
Yeah.
different approach. They're not actually getting a stake in the company, even if it's at a very small level. It's really like you put in some money and then maybe you may get the product or whatever it is once they're done, developing it. It's kind of an R&D thing more than it is a to build up capital for a business. So yeah.
Yeah, so this is equity crowdfunding. You're right. Most people think Kickstarter. This is something else similar, but it's actually more, there's something in it for you. You're not
Right.
donating money. Like
Right.
our goal is that in 5 years, instead of having, the 3,000 to 4,000 bikes, that we have 150,000.
Right.
Because at that point it would be worth 50 times what we are worth today.
Right.
And therefore return investors 50 times what they invest. We I don't think it's a crazy goal because it's been done with RVs and with boats.
Right.
And with cars, they're in the millions of cars, not just hundreds of
Right.
thousands. So yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy, right? That people are sharing their motorcycles out there, but like that after the first time you do it, and the person comes back with your bike and it's fine, and they're super friendly, and they actually love your bike because that's why they rented it, right? Because they
Right.
love that model, right?
Right.
So like
Right.
it's I made a couple of really good friends by renting on the platform, and that are from Austin, Texas too. So like it ends up becoming like more than just a way to make money, right? It becomes a community, and we're riding those coattails. So next week we're gonna launch. This week we're gonna launch experiences. So basically we're gonna allow our hosts to offer tours, classes, or whatever, anything they want when the person rents the motorcycle. And eventually, kind of like Airbnb will offer experiences, motorcycle experiences as a standalone product.
Right.
But right now it's something that you book with the rental, and we'll see where people take it.
Right.
One concern is in the motorcycle industry is that fewer people are getting licenses every year.
Right.
And I think that if we offer classes as a fun experience for people that don't ride, and we market them properly, because
Right. Right.
they're not, yeah, the MSF classes, they're not getting any kind of marketing, I mean, that I know of.
Yeah.
And so I think a company like ours that has a track record of, convincing people to share their motorcycle.
Exactly. Do something that most people wouldn't think to do otherwise. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah, I
mean,
think.
I've talked to a number of, motorcycle people that are instructors at school or do different kinds of training. And apparently, one of the things they struggle with from a marketing standpoint is just the word training. It sounds too much like it's a chore. It's not fun. And so what they're often trying to do is convince people that if you want to enjoy riding more, being a better rider is a good way to do that, because you can be more confident. It's not really about speed as much as it is about confidence in any given situation. And again, you and I were talking about the roads, near where I live in Malibu. So there's some of the more challenging roads that you can ride, very tight corners and decreasing radius, and everything. Basically lots of surprises there. So if you're better, if you've got more skills, you're at the controls, you can enjoy riding at whatever pace you're comfortable with. You'll get more out of it. There's less fear of and things like that. So I could see, especially if somebody was to come visit Southern California, like, hey, I want to rent a motorcycle. And then if somebody who was renting it out be like, hey, for X number of dollars, I can take you out and show you some of the best roads in this area and go to this cool lunch spot or something like that. So, because that way they could go ride with some people. That riding with locals is always the best way to do it. So I could see that
Yeah.
being a cool thing that could be an add-on for some people that would like to meet new people and show them around and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, when people rent my bike, they often don't know where to go, and I'm like, "Have you heard of Hill Country?" Like, no, what's
Yeah. Yeah.
like? Yeah, like so it's like they're renting motorcycles and they don't even know how what the amazing roads that Austin, Texas has, right?
Right.
So like, what if they did know? Like, will they rent more? So that's kind of like the thinking, and the other part was like, well, I could get paid, $150 to go run my favorite road and come back. Then
Right.
hell yeah.
Right, right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's funny, since we've been talking about this, I've got a dual sport in my garage that doesn't get ridden that often. And it's a 2017, so it's not brand new, but I also thought about, like, wow, could I fit another bike in there that I could then rent out? Because I'm close enough to those Malibu roads and other places. I'm not right in LA proper, but just north of us is Santa Barbara. And so being on the Southern California coast, I've already got the gears turning in the back of my mind. So yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, cool. I appreciate you sharing Rider Share with our listeners. I mean, I was familiar with it because one of our editors had rented a bike through your network. It was a very positive experience. We had a story about it in the magazine. We'll make sure and have a link to the Rider Share website, and I invite people to go check it out, see what kind of bikes are available in your area, and do what the little bit of tire kicking and see if there's something that a bike you've always been curious about you might be able to rent in your area, or if you've got a motorcycle vacation plan or a vacation plan and you might want to just rent a bike for a day or two while you're there, go see if there's something in that destination where you can find a cool bike, and just add a different activity to a vacation. So but also we'll have a link to the listing on Republic. Again, what do you call it? You said equity crowdfunding, but you said there's a name for it, Rex.
Oh,
I don't know what that stands for.
Regulations CF.
Okay, regulation CF. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm. I don't
Yeah.
know what the CNF stands. I think the CF stands for crowdfunding.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have a link
Yeah.
to that as well, so people can check that out. So, again, I appreciate your time, and again, congratulations on you built what is a really cool business. I mean, I was just talking to somebody in a previous episode that is a photographer who rode motorcycles on the weekends and taught himself photography, and he's Killboy. He built this thriving business. He takes photos at Tail of the Dragon. So anybody who is a motorcyclist like you are that builds a thriving business is great. It keeps you connected to the community and the industry, but you're also providing a service that's of real value to the renters and the people who are renting bikes out and the people who are renting them as well. So yeah.
Thanks. I haven't really been able to do nearly as much riding as I was hoping to. Nor my co-founder Brandon, same complaint. We're always working in front of a screen instead of being out riding. So it didn't pan out the way we wanted.
Yeah.
But it takes time. It takes
Okay.
a lot of time.
Well, I've got a trip in the works to go. I've got a couple of friends in Austin. My wife and I are going to come out there at some point, so I'll have to look you up and see if I could rent a bike and go check out the Hill Country. So I really appreciate your time, and like I said, folks, check out it's riders-share.com. Is that correct? There's a hyphen in the website.
Correct. It
Okay.
was an affordable domain back when I started.
Understood. So, well, Guillermo, thanks for your time. Check out riders-share.com. Go check out some motorcycle rentals, and we'll check out the show notes for some other links. For the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, I'm Greg Drevenstedt. Thanks for listening, and keep the rubber side down.
Thanks.
If you've enjoyed listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, please subscribe, leave us a positive rating, and tell your friends. We also encourage you to visit ridermagazine.com, where you can get the latest in motorcycle news and reviews and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can also subscribe to print and digital editions of Rider Magazine, which is published 12 times a year. Thanks again for listening.